You have recently gotten the courage to take a few small steps forward, doing things in alignment with your heart that will ultimately change your life for the better since 2020. And it wasn't as scary as you thought it would be. As a matter of fact, it was actually quite empowering. As a result, you now want to do a lot more quickly to change your life for the better and turn your life completely around. But in your passion and your haste, you may lose focus of what truly matters and change things that really don't need changing. You may also burn yourself out. That is the opposite of effective action and may only serve to set you back and destroy the things you care about most in the process. At this new moon in Taurus, you must learn how to harness your desire, pace yourself, and narrow your focus so that the changes you make are the right ones, can be done consistently, and will last the test of time to get you into this better life that it is that you so desire. Hi, I'm your astrologer, Brittany of Ethereal Astrology, helping you to see the larger story of your life. Today, you're watching your horoscope for the collective for the new moon in the sign of Taurus, which occurs on Sunday, April 27th, 2025 at 3:31 p.m. Eastern Time or 12:31 p.m. Pacific Time. Now, let's go ahead and let's hop right into it. In order to get started, what I like to do first is to place on the chart what it is that I'm referring to so that you can see it and follow along with me. So let me do that now. This chart is for the new moon in Taurus. Because of that, I've adjusted the chart accordingly for that lunar event. I know that because I've got the sun and the moon here in the same sign at the same degree, which is a conjunction here in the chart here of Taurus, right? And when the moon makes a conjunction with the sun, same sign degree, that's a new moon that we've got going on here. Okay. Next, what I like to do is to explain some general themes here around this new moon and what may come up. To do that, I'm going to talk about what a new moon is in general. Now, new moons are the beginning of a new lunar month or a new lunar cycle, which lasts for about 4 weeks until that next new moon. And because of that, they're a lot about new beginnings, new energy here, and fresh starts. Okay, not only do I want to note that, but I also want to note too that a new moon is when the moon is the darkest in the sky or the hardest to see. So another thing I want to note is that not only are new moons about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts, but they might be hard to see at first, or they might appear small at first, but they're going to grow bigger over time and become more seen over time as we go throughout the entire lunar month and then onwards. Okay, what are we getting this new beginning, new energy, and fresh start in that may seem small or hard to see at first? Well, that's going to be the sign of Taurus here because that's the sign that this new moon is in. Okay, what is Taurus all about? Well, I think the first thing that stands out to me as being the most relevant for this horoscope is that Taurus is a fixed sign and it's the second sign of the zodiac. And fixed signs are a lot about staying fixed in things or sustaining things that really were already started previously by the cardinal signs here that come before them as well. So that's one of the things that I think is going on here at this new moon in Taurus is that we're trying to get some sort of new beginning, new energy, and fresh start that's starting small, may not see it yet, to sustain something and stay fixed in something that we already started prior to this. Okay. Not only that, but I also want to note as well that Taurus is an earth sign. Earth signs tend to do more with our tangible environment and our 5 senses, right? Or however many senses we have, things we can touch and feel and see and smell and all of that here as well. And really working with our physical environment to bring those things together, right? In service of the thing that we started that we're now trying to sustain. So to continue bringing it together at this new moon in Taurus, not only are we trying to sustain something we already started, but we're trying to work things together in our physical environment in order to support that as well. Okay. Not only that, but other things I should note about Taurus is that Taurus to me is also a little bit of a slower sign, being fixed earth, right? It's hard to do things fast when you're fixed in something, when you're working with the physical environment. And also too, with it being a Venus ruled sign, Venus tends to go about things in a more easy way without forcing and pushing things here too. So it tends to be slower. And if not a slower sign, because there's a few reasons why I don't like the word slow right now, then in a way that's just more natural, more natural, more easy here and all of that. So not only at this new moon in Taurus are we trying to get a new beginning to sustain something that we really already started and work our physical environment together in support of that, but we're also trying to do it in a way that's either slower or just easier and more natural here as well, because that's how you sustain something, right? If you're going fast, you're not really sustaining and bringing it all together in the way that you need. Okay, that's why they're all related. Okay, another thing that I want to note here about Taurus as well is that Taurus, being an earth sign and correlated to Venus, also has to do with our resources that we have available to help us sustain these things, which in a lot of ways is our own gifts, skills, and talents that we already have here too. So that's another thing that's going on at this new moon in Taurus. We're trying to sustain something that already started, work our physical environment together, no matter how long it takes, okay, and to use our own gifts, skills, and talents that we currently have at our disposal in order to make that happen, okay? Not only that, but other things I'll note is that Taurus, also being Earth and also correlating to Venus, has to do with our confidence, and it has to do with our own self-worth or belief in our abilities to say sustain something and to have it work, and no matter how long it takes, and do what the situation needs as well. So that also is coming up with this new moon in Taurus, sustaining something that was already started, working it together in our physical environment, no matter how long it takes, using our gifts, skills, and talents to continue this process, and being confident in ourselves that it's going to work. Again, no matter how long it takes in order to move us forward. Not only that, but another thing that I'll note is that Taurus is on this side of the zodiac, right around here, which tends to be a little more self-focused in the individual, and not so much on other people here as well. And because of that, Taurus has to do with our own self and our own values and priorities as individuals. The things that are important to us, not everyone else, but to us, what is the most important to us here, and what those priorities are, which again are helpful when you're trying to sustain something here, maybe that you've never done before that's going on. So I think that's also a theme coming up at this new moon in Taurus, right? New beginning, new energy, fresh start. That may be small, hardly see it yet, to sustain something we just started here. Work our physical environment together in support of that, no matter how long it takes, and use our skills and talents in order to make happen, and to be confident in our abilities, and to align them all of these things that we're trying to sustain with our values and priorities to make sure that they're truly good for us as individuals. And then the last thing that I think I'm going to note here about Taurus is that Taurus is also the second sign of spring here. Especially in the northern hemisphere, which is where the ancient astrologers were when they came up with a lot of these things, because Taurus season is when you see plants start to grow and flowers bloom and all of that here as well. And because of that, Taurus is also associated as well with fertility and abundance and beauty here as well, and creating just like an abundant life that we feel is more beautiful, more aligned, more fruitful, and all of that, which sustaining something really helps you to create, that we're trying to get to. So that to me is the big themes here to keep in mind about this new moon in Taurus. New beginning, new energy, fresh starts to sustain something that really we already started, work our physical environment together in support of that, no matter how long it takes, and use our gift, skills, and talents to do, and be confident it's going to work if we keep at it and align these things with our values and priorities, so that we can create a more beautiful and abundant and fruitful and fertile lifestyle that we're going to like. Okay, here. So that to me is going on. Now what I like to do next, before diving into the specifics of this new moon itself, is to go a little bit backwards in time here before going forwards, to give you more of the context of how we got here to those themes that I just described, and why they're coming up. Because we have a new moon in Taurus every single year. That's not really that unique. It's the other alignments that I think come before it that really can make the most difference between each new moon in the same sign and the next one. So I want to discuss that. Now, in this video, I'm not going to go back to 2020, which I normally do if you've been following me for a while, and I don't know if I'm going to continue to do that in any videos after this. The reason for that is because that section has just gotten very long and very exhausting to say. Another reason for that too is because I think that we are, especially as of that last new moon, solar eclipse in Aries, which we're going to talk about, are starting to turn a corner. We're starting to turn a corner away from 2020 here, or turn the page on that and begin to kind of move on. So there's another reason why I feel like it might not be the most helpful to go back to that. But even though I'm not going to go back to 2020, I still believe context is super important here, just in general in life. I wish more things included context, not only in life, but is super important to me and the way that I do astrology and the way I do my horoscopes. And I think a lot of what makes my horoscopes unique. So I'm still going to keep context here. I'm just not going to go back to 2020 here. Instead, I'm going to just mention other aspects that have recently happened that are influencing the reason my horoscope and the reason why I'm interpreting it the way that I'm interpreting it. So I'm just going to do that here, and I'm going to just experiment with it over the course of the next few months and see how it goes. And I feel like now may be a good time to do that, especially since we just had the astrological new year, Aries season, to kind of start that. I'm now going to give you some context, but not with 2020. I think instead I'm going to go back to that new moon solar eclipse in Aries, which happened just 4 weeks ago, right around here at the beginning of the zodiac. And I want to go back to that again because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, the astrological new year, and because it was a solar eclipse as well, which is a pretty big deal. So what was that about? Which was May of 2025 of this year. Okay. New moons are about new beginnings. Solar eclipses superpower that, especially in Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. So that was huge about some new beginning of life that we were getting a big boost to step into here at that time just a month ago. I also want to note as well that for various reasons, I believe that was connected to 2020 here, and that new beginning and chapter of life that we were trying to step into just a month ago here was to try one more time since 2020, right? To get out of old situations and to get into different ones. Okay, not only do I want to say that about the new moon solar eclipse in Aries that recently occurred, but I also want to note that Aries is a lot about motivation. It's a lot about drive. So it's a lot too, not only about us, trying again to move into a different and better experience of life since 2020 and separate from that timeline. But it's also about us getting more of the motivation and more of the drive than I think we'd had in the past 5 years in order to do so here, with Aries being a Mars ruled sign. Okay, in addition to that, other things to me that are important about Aries is that Aries too, being a Mars ruled sign, has to do with our actions and with our behaviors. And I think also doing those in new ways as well, with it being the first sign of the zodiac, the eclipse was there. And I think acting in new ways that are more Aries as well. And to me, Aries can do things in ways that are simpler and that are easier. And also too, Aries is more individual, about what's in our best interest as individuals and not what everyone else wants or society wants or things of that sort here too. So I also think we were getting a new way of behaving as well, which I also need to note, I do not think we've had since 2020. And I think is super key to actually making it work this time, right? Because if we want to separate from old things that have been holding us down, we need to do things in a different way than the way we've done them before. So I think that's a big thing to note recently. Big boost to move into a different and better experience of life since 2020, with more motivation and drive, and with a totally different approach to it, with a totally different approach of moving forward here that is simpler, that's easier, and that's based more on our own individual truth and desires instead of that of society and other people and what they think and want, which is going to make all the difference. Not only that, but one other alignment I also want to mention too before we get back to this new moon in Taurus, and that's going to be here, Venus, Saturn, and the North Node, all conjunct in Pisces, which they were 2 weeks ago at that full moon in Libra, and which they still are now as well. You can see it here in the horoscope for that. too. So I want to take a look at that. Now, in some ways, this can be challenging, right? Because Saturn is there, which can kind of block and restrict things here. And I think block and restrict us from getting full clarity about things that we need, especially because Pisces can be a little confusing and hazy when challengingly aspected here. That's going on. So even though we're getting a big boost to move forward into a different and better experience of life since 2020 with more motivation in a different way that's simpler and easier and more aligned with us, I still don't think that we had all the complete clarity and all the complete answers about how exactly to do that and in what way in order to make that happen. Okay. Not only that, but I also want to note that Venus was a part of this alignment. So even though Saturn and Pisces can be a little bit hard, Venus is very positive. I also tend to like the North Node. And Venus is positive because it's in Pisces, it's sign of exaltation, where it really likes to be. And Venus is a lot about ease. It's also a lot about trusting things. And Pisces too, when positive, can be about our intuition here and taking maybe small steps, especially with the Saturn here, without all the full clarity based on our intuition. So that's other things to remember here is that very recently, a month ago, we got a big boost to step into a new, different, and better experience of life that we've been trying to get to 2020. Except now with a totally different approach to it that's simpler, easy, and more in alignment with our own identity, which is actually going to make it work here. That's going on. And this new approach that we have recently gotten is wonderful. It's great, right? I think it's going to work, but it doesn't have all the answers laid out for us step by step of what to do. Instead, it's just been us trying to trust our intuition one step at a time and trust our instincts one step at a time. Okay. That's going on. Not only that, but I also want to bring that back to the new moon in Taurus, of which this video is for, right? And of what we were just talking about at the beginning of the video. Because remember, I said this new moon in Taurus is about sustaining something that we just started, especially in a more tangible way, no matter how long it takes, with our skills and talents being more confident in it, right? And so all of that's going to relate back to the new moon solar eclipse in Aries, to this new beginning that we're trying again since 2020 to move into a different experience of life with a different way of behaving that's simpler, easier, more independent, and more trusting of our instincts, right? Without having all of the answers. That's what we're trying to sustain, okay? We're trying to sustain movement forward, new experience of life since 2020, different way of behaving, simpler, easier here, trusting our intuition without having all the answers, okay? No matter how long it takes to eventually get to that new beginning that it is that we're now trying to create, okay? So I hope that that's clear there about how that all relates. Now, what I'm going to do, I think that's going to conclude that for now, that section. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this new moon in Taurus here and zoom in to that. So let's do that. To do that, I'm going to place the new moon in Taurus here on the chart again, which, as I said, is about us sustaining, and I think sustaining movement forward into a new, different, and better experience of life since 2020, here with new behavior, simpler, easier, and more intuitive, trusting more of our intuition and our instinct over logic and clarity here that's going on. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at an alignment here that this new moon is specifically making here to give more detail on that. And the first one that I want to look at is going to be here, this new moon in Taurus making a square over here to Mars in the sign of Leo. Okay, now, this is not, I'm going to say this is not my favorite alignment. This is not the best one, I'll say, because a square is a hard aspect. Mars, by the ancient astrologers, is also considered to be a malefic planet. And malefic means more challenging, to bring more challenging things. But even though it is a challenging alignment, and I will interpret it as such at some point in this horoscope, I'm going to focus more on some of the positives here now. And I want to focus a little bit on the positives because Mars is still in post-retrograde shadow at the time of this new moon in Taurus, but it's 2 degrees away from coming out of it here. So Mars is about to leave post-retrograde shadow here in the sign of Leo. And that to me is actually a good thing. So there is something good going on here, even though there's some challenging alignment with it. Why is that a good thing? And what does it mean when a planet comes out of post-retrograde shadow? Well, when a planet comes out of post-retrograde shadow, which it will do shortly after this new moon, it means that it's out of anything to do with retrograde, and it's past all of the degrees that it went retrograde. So that's done. Not only that, but it also means too that it's starting to move up to speed at its more natural speed, whatever that is, which can bring more forward momentum or more ease of moving forward, of progress here as well. That's going on. Not only is it a good thing because of that, but I also need to note Mars is in Leo. It has been for the past few weeks, which is a good thing since it was in Cancer for quite a while, which it was retrograde, and Cancer is a sign it doesn't like to be in. So I'm going to interpret this positively for now, even though I will come back to it and interpret it in a negative or challenging way. But what can some of the positives be here with this? Well, Mars is a planet of action. It is a planet of doing things here. And sometimes a square can bring more of that, right? Can indicate there is that going on here, especially when it comes to the sun and the moon, acting on things that are important to us, things that we're feeling. So this to me, but one of the things this indicates to me is that there is some sort of action that we're taking or that we're doing, and that there is some sort of forward movement that we're making that is starting to pick up speed, or starting to feel like it's coming along. Here, in some sort of way. Not only that, but other things I want to note as well is that Mars too is not only about action and doing things, it's also too about motivation and drive here as well. And especially in Leo has a lot to do with courage to kind of move forward, and face our fears, and not let those get the best of us. So not only to me is this alignment about us taking action here in our lives, but us getting even more than we already might have had the past few weeks, more motivation and more courage and more drive to keep at it. It is here. We're sustaining that, especially with it squaring the Taurus here. We're sustaining the motivation and the drive that we need and the courage to move on. Not only that, but other things I want to note is that Mars is here in Leo. Leo, again, is more of an individual sign, more about us as individuals here, since it is ruled by the sun, which has to do with our individual identities here as well. So not only is this action here in us doing things and getting more motivation to do things maybe even more easily, it's about the things that we're doing being more in alignment with our identity, more in alignment with our identity than they were before, and what's important to us and not other people in society and all of that. Not only that, but Leo's about our heart and what makes us happy as individuals. So it's also about us really trying to tune into our heart, our happiness, our joy, and the core of our being as well, to really move these things forward. That to me is very good. Not only that, but another thing that I'll note as well, that again, with Mars coming out soon, very soon, out of post-retrograde shadow, I think there's more of an effectiveness. There's something that's starting to little by little, especially because new moons, right? Remember, the moon's dark, hard to see. It's starting to little by little work. These actions that we're doing, these actions that we're taking, this courage that we're having, and to work to be more effective here and to align our life towards that, towards our heart, towards our identity, towards the core of our being. So I think that's the first thing that I'm going to say here about this new moon, is that we're trying to sustain some new, different, and better chapter of life. Okay, that we just got a boost to move into since 2020, and some new behaviors that are going to help us move into that new, different, and better experience of life here, especially if you watched my context. And those new behaviors are ones that are simpler, easier, and more in alignment with ourselves as individuals. And we're trying to trust more of ourselves and our instincts to do it, and it's working. It's working. We are moving forward. We are sustaining some new, different, and better experience of life. We are moving forward here into a different and better experience. We are getting the courage to do it, the motivation. We are honoring more of our heart and what's inside ourselves, and it's starting to get easier or feel a little quicker. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention. And I'm actually going to skip around to a few things in this video here. So I'm going to come out of the new moon for a second, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to that Mars. And I'm going to come back to some other things. And I want to go here, Mercury. Okay, because Mercury, right before this new moon in Taurus, also left post retrograde shadow here in the sign of Aries, because it was retrograde in Aries and then in Pisces for a bit, and now it's done. And that also means that Mercury is out of anything having to do with retrograde, out of those degrees, and is now able to move fast, and already has been for a little bit, move fast and move more up to speed here that's going on. So we've got two planets. Do you see right around this new moon in Taurus that are either out of or about to be out of post retrograde shadow, moving fast or faster, and Mercury moves very fast, faster, up to speed more easily here that's going on. Okay. What else can this bring? Well, other things that I want to note is that Mercury is a lot about our mind here as well. And with it now, it's moving fast, up to speed, out of retrograde. It can bring a clearer mind. It can bring a sharper mind. Not only that, Mercury also has to do with our conscious mind, conscious realizations here as well, not spiritual and intuitive ones. That's more Neptune. Okay. But more conscious realizations as well, in that starting to come together. Maybe us more consciously realizing things that were just inklings and intuitions a short time ago here as well. That's going on. Not only that, but Mercury too, because it is so good at communication and thought, and our conscious mind can also start to put together a little bit of a plan about how things might go, how we want things to work out, and may have our mind buzzing with a lot of ideas around that and around things that we can do Aries, right? It's in the sign of Aries to improve our lives. And again, with Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, to start new things in our life that are going to be better for us. Not only that, but other things I want to note as well is that Mercury to me also has to do with our physical environment as well, because it not only correlates to Gemini, but it also correlates to Virgo as well, both its home signs here. And Virgo is more about our physical environment. And with Mercury moving up to speed, this can also mean too that we're getting more clarity on how to adjust our physical environment for the better, and that it's happening more easily and quickly as well, more success at getting that done and making a lot of that happen. In addition to that, Mercury is also, again, has to do with communication. So it can also either make our communication clearer or just quicker and more sharp here as well. That's going on, which I think if we're considering this in and of itself, right, is a good thing. Multiple indicators in a chart, not just Mercury, but also Mars here, indicating forward momentum. What we're doing is working. What we're thinking is working. Okay. And effective, and we're getting more clarity. So to put all of that together now with everything I've said so far in this video, including the context here, is that we are trying to sustain another try into a new, different, and better experience of life that we've been trying to get to since 2020, with totally different behaviors that are simpler and easier and more in alignment with our intuition here. And with our own identity, and it's freaking working. We're freaking doing it, and we're getting the courage to do it and the motivation to do it and to keep at it, and it's coming together. And not only is it working, we're moving forward into a different experience life, and it's working, but the more it works, the more clear we get about what to do and how to do it, and more conscious steps about how to do it here. That's going on, that I think is good. And maybe I should even note empowering. There's something empowering happening here. Okay, with the Leo, with the fire signs, the Leo and the Aries, both of them direct, that's making us feel more empowered to do stuff and to take action here in our lives. Okay, the next alignment that I want to take a look at is going to be another one, not directly related to the new moon, but happening around it. And that's going to be here. Uranus is in Taurus, making a trine over here to the south node in Virgo. And as a result, is also making a sextile over here to the north node in Pisces, since the south node and the north node are connected here, which is also going to include Venus and Saturn, which are near the north node here too. Now, if this alignment was just Uranus in the south node, I'd say this is a challenge, but because it's a sextile in the other way to the north node and to Venus and Saturn, to me this is also meant to be more of a positive thing here that's going on, with of course the sextiles helping to get the goods from that trine. What is the good thing that's happening? Well, Uranus can be about the sudden and the unexpected. This can be in our physical environment here, things happening more tangibly, especially with Taurus, it being in Taurus, right, an earth sign. But it doesn't have to be. Sometimes Uranus is about the higher mind, it's ideas. This can also just be sudden and unexpected thoughts and ideas here that are going on in our mind. Here as well. What might those be? Well, it's connecting to the south node in Virgo. The south node is a lot about letting go of things. Virgo is a lot about stress, overwork, overthinking here as well. That's going on here too. So I think part of these unexpected insights or unexpected events that are happening are helping us to let go of old mindsets that are keeping us stuck, overthinking, overwork, and just old things that aren't working for us anymore, or that are also keeping us stuck here as well. That's going on. And trine can also indicate that happening more quickly and more easily than it was before. Not only that, but we've got the sextiles on the other side that Uranus is making to all this stuff in Pisces. Here, Pisces is a lot about ease, things being easier or things being simpler, or just things taking less effort, since Pisces does typically correlate to sleep here. So it's a lot about that here too. Not only that, but Pisces as well can also be about the divine, feeling inspired by the divine or supported by the divine here as well. When it comes to our situation, it can also too be about compassion and feeling more compassionate for ourselves and others too. That's going on, especially if we're seeing some things work. So very good, a lot of good things going on here, which if I can be honest, excuse me, is a bit unusual. If you've been following my horoscope since 2020, we've had a lot of difficult ones, but, and don't get me wrong, there's some challenging things we're going to talk about in a minute, but I definitely think there's something very positive that is beginning to happen, okay? And to put that together before I move on to the next aspect, this new moon in Taurus, right? We're trying to sustain a new beginning into a new, different, and better experience of life we've been trying to get to since 2020, right? That we recently got the motivation to try again and to do it in a different way that's more in alignment with our that's more in alignment with our own identity, and that's simpler and easier and more in alignment with our intuition. And it is working. We are doing it. We are moving into a new, different, and better experience of life in a different way that's more aligned with our identity, our heart, and our soul. And we're getting the courage to do it. And things are shifting, perhaps suddenly and unexpectedly, in that positive direction to help us let go of things that we did not like, that were not working for us, that were keeping us stuck in overwork and stress, and move in an easier direction here. And we're feeling more divinely supported in order to make all of that happen. And we're getting more and more clear with every step we take on what exactly needs to be done and on how it needs to be done here, and in what way to make it all work. Okay. That then leads me now to the next thing that I want to talk about. And this is probably the most important thing here that's related to this new moon in Taurus, and probably the most challenging thing as well. But we're now going to go into that. And that's going to be here, this new moon in Taurus, not only making that square to Mars that I was talking about before, but also making a square over here to Pluto in Aquarius, while also Mars in Leo makes an opposition to it. But let me get the degrees so you can see it here. All right. Mars making that opposition to Pluto. So that's what we've got here. This new moon in Taurus square, sure, Mars and Leo, but also Pluto and Aquarius, which are making an opposition to each other, which is a T-square that's going on here. Okay, now this is difficult. Okay, why is this difficult? Well, first of all, it's a square. Okay, squares are hard aspects here that's going on, that the new moon's making to Pluto. In addition, Pluto is aspecting Mars as well by an opposition, and opposition is also a hard aspect. Okay, not only does that make it challenging, but another thing that makes it challenging too is that Pluto's involved. Okay, it's not that Pluto's inherently bad, it's just that Pluto is an outer planet, and sometimes the outer planets are harder for us to understand, so much so we can't even decide if Pluto's a planet or not. Okay, these things are just difficult for us here on Earth. Not only that, but Mars is involved here too in this alignment, and the ancient astrologers did consider, again, Mars a malefic planet having to do with war, right? The planet of war here that's going on. So tends to be a very challenging thing that's happening. Okay, what is the challenge that's going on? Well, I'm going to start here with Pluto and what's the challenge there with that. Now, Pluto, when it is a challenge, especially by hard aspect as it is, hold on, excuse me, I got to get some water. I'm recovering from a little bit of a cold. Okay. Now, Pluto, when it is challenging to me, tends to bring it too much in a direction, to do too much of something that can be a little imbalanced here. Not only that, but what Pluto tends to bring too much of that's imbalanced, to me, does tend to be a lot of desire, right? That's what we typically know Pluto about: subconscious emotions, fears, desires. Well, to me, Pluto by hard aspect brings too much desire and an intense desire that can be imbalanced. Not only can it bring that, but to me, it can also bring, especially paired with Mars, a bit of impatience here as well, right? When you want something so bad, so much, and that's all you desire, you can get impatient. Okay, not only that, but when you're impatient, you can also tend to push things, right? Especially with Mars there, the planet of action, push things and force things here too. That's going on here as well. And not only that, but another thing that I want to note is not only Pluto about intense desire that can be a little too much and making us impatient and push things, but another thing is that Pluto too can be about our subconscious emotions and, again, fears. And I wanted to bring that up because fear to me is really the root cause of why we are pushing things, and of why we're kind of getting impatient and forcing a lot of this as well. And not only that, but I should note too that it's an Aquarius here as well and how that's affecting it. Aquarius is an air sign. And I will say, typically in the past, if you've been, again, watching my horoscopes for a while, I would interpret Aquarius a lot as overthinking, too much, right? Especially with the Pluto there, too much thinking. But as of that last full moon in Libra 2 weeks ago, I think we turned a little bit of a corner on that. So I'm going to interpret this a bit differently. Aquarius is a sign of revolution, of innovation, of wanting things to be unique and totally different than the way they were before. So I think that the desire, the intense desire that we now have is to revolutionize everything, change everything now, immediately, fast, more, and whatever way that it is that we can, and to not settle for the past, to not settle for the status quo here, anything of that sort, and a lot of pushing and forcing of that. Okay, not only that, but remember I said Pluto has to do with subconscious fear. So I think fear is really an underlying thing here. Well, maybe I should say this. I think part of it is passion, right? I think part of the reason why we want to push to change everything is partially desire and passion, because what we're doing is working, right? We just talked about that. What we're doing is working. But I think also part of it is fear. And I think part of it is fear, because that's also what Pluto does, that if we don't change everything now, while it's starting to work, that it's never going to happen. That if we don't do it now, then something's going to come up, just like it has the past 5 years, to keep us stuck, to hold us back, and all of that, and that we need to do more now, faster here. Okay. Not only that, but again, it's aspecting Mars here, a hard aspect to Mars. And Mars can bring the pushing and the forcing, right? But what else happens when you push and you force things here and you want something so much and you're a little afraid? Well, tension happens. And this can take the form of inner tension here. That there's a lot of inner frustration that's going on. And Mars especially can bring anger too as well. So this can be mad at yourself. Why aren't I going faster? Why didn't I think of this sooner? Why didn't I know this? Why don't I do that? It can bring a lot of inner tension, being mad at yourself for not being able to do things differently or go faster or figure things out better. Not only that, but it can also too turn that anger externally towards other people and make you mad at other people or other people mad at you, who you or they may perceive to be in your way and slowing you down here as well, which can, again, arguments and conflicts and disagreements that can be extremely uncomfortable and tense and very difficult. Okay. Not only can it bring that, but another thing that can go on, especially now when you get Mars, is that Mars, because it pushes things too hard, another manifestation can be doing too much and then burnout, right? If you're not mad at yourself and mad at someone else, or maybe you are, right? Then you're doing so much that you burn yourself out, you get exhausted. Maybe there's some health challenges, especially with the South Node here in Virgo now, that's going on, that can make that very, very difficult for you to sustain, right? That's the whole point of the new moon in Taurus. That's what the new moon in Taurus wants, and that's where it's squaring, to sustain this new beginning and to really make it work and last the test of time here as well. Not only that, but Mars can be destructive too. So if you're not getting mad at yourself and other people and burning out, then it can cause you to do too much or just do things that are unnecessary. Do things that are unnecessary for your situation here that's going on, and to not think sensibly. You know, Taurus can be very sensible, being an earth sign. We're no longer thinking sensibly. We're just trying to change everything because that's all we want to do. So we're just destroying everything in our path, you know, instead of thinking, and it's not like we even need a lot of thinking, instead of just thinking practically about, like, is this something that's important to you that you value, or is this something that you don't? So it can create some of that too, that can be very chaotic. You know, that and Pluto, very chaotic, a lot of instability that can make things feel very messy for no reason, right? Because everything's going fine, you know, because everything really is fine here. That can be very difficult. So to continue bringing it together here, that's what I think is going on, right, at this new moon in Taurus, is that we are trying again to get into a new, different, and better experience of life since 2020, this time with a different perspective and a different way of behaving that's simpler and easier and more in tune with our own identity here. And we're trying to sustain that and to keep at it and to trust our intuition in the process. And it's working. It's working. We are doing it. We are moving into a different and better experience of life and sustaining it. And it is coming together, and we're keeping up the motivation and the courage in order to make it happen. And the more that we do it, we start to get more confident in ourselves. We start to get more empowered. We start to get more clear on exactly what needs to happen and how it needs to happen. And we start to suddenly see more things shift in our life away from things we didn't like and toward things that do. And we feel more divinely supported. And because we're feeling so divinely supported, so capable, like things are working, and also we're afraid that if it won't work, if we don't do it all now, we then start to get too desirous and to push too much, too hard, too soon, to make more of these changes faster, to make more of these changes now, to make more of these changes quicker. And we start to tear everything down, and we start to push our way through and force things to happen, which can create a lot of inner tension and anger at ourselves, a lot of external tension and anger at other people who we perceive to be in our way, slowing us down. Here may also create us just doing a lot of things without thinking about it, without being sensible. That can create a huge mess in our situation and instability that's unnecessary, and eventually burn us out and create health issues or exhaustion here as well. That again is not really needed in our situation because we're doing just fine. Okay. That then leads me now to the next thing that I want to say, and really the last thing I'm going to say here in terms of the aspects, which is the advice. What now is the advice here? Well, the advice that I want to give you is going to be based obviously on this new moon, because that's what this video is for. But because the new moon is making a T-square here, which is two squares, right, connected by an opposition. And whenever I see a T-square, I think of an arrow, right? We got an arrow pointing here, and that arrow points to the focal point of the T-square, which is that new moon in Taurus here. Do you see where it's pointing? I'm trying to make it darker for you. Okay, and what that means to me is that the focal point of the T-square, in this case, the new moon in Taurus, is what needs to be done more of, that we're struggling to do more of. That really is the advice to move us forward. What is that advice that the new moon in Taurus can give us? Okay. Well, a few things here. Taurus is, yes, typically considered a slower sign, being fixed, Earth, Venus ruled, but it doesn't mean doing nothing. It doesn't mean standing still, right? Sustaining something doesn't mean doing nothing. Okay. It just means doing things, but in a little bit of a slower way. Or if you don't like slower, you don't like the word slower, in a little bit more of an easier way that feels natural without as much force, right? That's the Venus. We need a little more Venus here to balance out the Mars, okay? A little more natural, a little more easy, maybe even to use another word. I think Taurus is musical. Taurus, Pisces, and Libra to me are very musical. And we've got the new moon in Taurus. We got a bunch of stuff in Pisces. We did just have a full moon in Libra, right? You find your own rhythm, find your own pace. And sometimes when you got a good song you like, it's not all fast all the time. It's not all slow all the time. We got to find a good middle rhythm here that's going on. So that's part of the advice here, is not to slow down entirely to a dead stop. We're not slowing down entirely to a dead stop. Things need to be done if you want to change your life for the better. Just do them a little bit more slowly than you might be naturally inclined, and in an easier way that's more natural and more rhythmic, and with a little bit more of a sustainable pace here. Okay, not only that, but other things that I'll note too about Taurus is that it also is about our priorities, right? Our values and our priorities here. And what is a priority? A priority is prioritizing. What do I value the most? What is the most important thing to me out of everything that I'm doing? So I think it's to focus a little bit more on your values and on your priorities here as well, because that's going to help you to focus your actions on the right actions, right? And to not take on too much at once, and to not tear down things in your haste that it is that you actually like. So there's also a need to prioritize out of everything you want to do, and out of everything that's working, what's the most important, what needs to be done first, what needs to be done second, what third, and so on and so forth, so that you don't overload yourself and try to do it all at once and make it all crazy. Okay, and do some reflection, excuse me, there on that. Another thing too that might be needed with the Taurus. And Taurus is also a lot about stability. You know, it's not about crazy chaos, 500 things going on at once, everything all over the place. So another thing that you might need to do is to get your situation to a little bit more of a stable place that's more manageable. Here. And maybe a word I'll use, simpler. To me, Taurus is a lot about the simple life, you know, with like the earth. It's like the simple life, simplifying things. So that's another piece of advice here is, you know, keep doing things just in a way that's a little bit slower or more rhythmic, a better pace that's easier to sustain, and that's more in alignment with your values and with your priorities here, and to stabilize your environment and to keep it simple. And maybe another thought here on the simple, I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't think that what's needed to change our life to be something different and better is a lot of actions, is a lot of things. I think what's needed to change our life to be different and better is a few small, simple steps, right? So if you're doing a lot, you're kind of missing it here. There's not a lot that's needed to change your life for the better. Less is more. Less is more, to me, is like a Taurus thing here that's trying to come together. Keep whatever you want to do, you got to scale it back to keep it simple, because that's all that's needed. A soft touch is really all that's needed. You don't need all this extra here. And maybe go off on a tangent for a minute. It's all this extra stuff that got us into this problem that we've been in for the past few years to begin with. Okay. Keep it simple. Another thought that I'll give you too is confidence. All right. Taurus is a lot about confidence in your own value and in your own self-worth. I think there's a little bit more that's needed of that too, because remember, part of the reason why we're getting impatient is not only because we're so excited about what we're doing and we want to change our life, but it's also too because of a little bit of a fear. There's an underlying fear that, like, what if it won't work? What if I can't do it? What if I stay stuck forever? So there's also a need too for you to be confident that you can do it, that this time is a charm, that this time you will make it work here, and that you don't need to go fast to do it. You don't need to go fast. You don't need to force everything in order to make it happen, because if you were truly confident that you were going to be able to make it work this time, and you wouldn't be rushing it, you'd know that you already had it in the bag here. That's going on. Okay, so I think that there's some of that here that's needed. And to let it unfold more naturally, with Venus being an earth sign, right? Let things unfold more naturally. Okay, so I think that that's the advice that I want to give you there, because that's going to calm down the haste, right? There's no need to force. There's no need to push. Things are going to be just fine. You just got to keep at it little by little here. That's going on. Okay. And that's it. Because that's it, I'm now just going to repeat all of that one last time without the astrological jargon before we move on to other things. So let me do that now. What I think is going on here at this new moon in the sign of Taurus is that we are sustaining one more try into a new, different, and better experience of life that we've been trying to get to since 2020 here, and the motivation in order to see it through, and some of our intuitive insights. And it is working. Us sustaining these steps to move into a new, different, and better experience of life is actually working to help us keep at it, and to help us start to see things shift in our lives away from things we didn't like and towards things that we do like here, perhaps suddenly and unexpectedly. Not only is it working, we are sustaining a movement into a new experience of life. We're seeing things suddenly and unexpectedly shift, but the more things suddenly and unexpectedly shift, I think the more empowered we start to feel, and the more conscious and clear we become on what needs to be done to improve our lives and how exactly it needs to be done, which is very, very, very good. But even though that's great, we start to get so excited. Even though that's great and things are coming together, we start to get too excited. I want to say too excited that we're making progress. And I think also too afraid that this progress is going to go away if we don't hold on to it, that we begin to push these changes to make them go even faster than they already are, and to be even more than they already are going, which I think then can start to create a lot of problems here in our situation. And it can start to create a lot of problems by just making us feel mad at ourselves, a lot of inner tension, or by making us feel mad at other people, and a lot of arguments and disagreements, especially people we perceive to be in our way and slowing things down. And that can make us just do too much that really isn't necessary for our situation, isn't sensible for our situation, and tear down or destroy things that are important to us here. Or that can just be too much and cause us to burn out with exhaustion or health issues, and not be able to follow through on these things that we're doing, that we're going very well. And because that's a challenge and that's happening at this new moon, I'm going to give you some advice. And the advice on how to handle that is to keep doing what we need to do to change our lives here, but to do it in in a little bit of a slower way, or in a way with a more of a natural rhythm and a natural pace here that is more sustainable in the process, and to simplify your actions so that you're not doing all this crazy stuff here, and to focus only on the stuff that actually matters, that your actual values and priorities, and on changing those first, and to be confident in yourself that you can make these changes even if you'd like it to go faster here, and that it will happen no matter how long it takes, because I do believe that it will happen. Okay, there, and happen soon. Okay, and that's it. Because that's it, and that's all we're going to talk about in terms of the specific aspects here. I'm now just going to say a few other things here about this horoscope in just a different way, so that you can hopefully get an even better idea of what this energy is about. Okay, what do I want to say here? Okay, there are some... Okay, I'm just going to add some thoughts. There's something good going on here. I hope you all have realized that. And I did try to mention that earlier in this horoscope. There is something good that's going on here that I think is different than the past few years. I think the past few years, there's been a lot of hard things going on. There's been more challenging things to talk about than good things in the astrology. Unfortunately, if I had a choice, it'd be different. But you know, it is what it is here. And finally, in the astrology, we are starting to get some good things here. And the good things that I think we're starting to get is more forward momentum and more progress here to move forward. Not only is it like more forward momentum and more progress, I think it's also more clarity about like what to do and how exactly to do it here, and maybe even a little more confidence, maybe even a little bit more confidence, maybe not fully, but a little bit more confidence, or just feeling, maybe I'll call it motivation, a little more motivation here in our situation in order to bring things together. So that's the first thing I want to note here. There's something very good going on, I think, which we haven't seen in a long time in the astrology, and that is clarity, motivation, and positive progress to adjust your life in a better way or do things that are important to you. Okay, but even though there's something very good going on here, there is still something a little challenging happening behind it. Okay, what is that challenging thing that's going on behind it? It's mostly the Pluto stuff. It's that we're getting ahead of ourselves. Right? And we're trying to force things to go too fast, too much or too soon. Here, that's going on. Okay. That's the bad thing that's happening. Why is that bad? Well, when you try to push and force things to go too fast, too much, too soon, really before they're ready, you create a whole bunch of issues. You create arguments with yourself and other people because you're kind of making things go at an unnatural pace. You're forcing things to go at a pace that's not natural to it. So it's going to create arguments and things like that, and disagreements. Not only that, but again, there's a lot of burnout here, because if you're pushing your body, right, to do things that's not natural, that's more than it needs, burnout, exhaustion, health issues, we don't want any of that. Okay, so it can create that. It can also create to just not be sensible, here, because sometimes when you're doing so much, you're not thinking, to not be thinking sensibly about what you're actually doing, and if you like what you're doing, and if it's working, and if it's valuable or not. Here, it can cause a little bit of that that's going on here, and some kind of chaos or instability or destruction of the things that you like, right? If you're not thinking about what you're doing, but you just are doing everything, then you may mess up something that you actually like in the process here. So it can create some kind of destruction in regards to that, or a lot of instability there. Okay, so want to see that is happening. Now, why is everything fine? Everything's going fine. We are making progress. Here, and we are getting clarity, but then all of a sudden we're pushing. We want to do more. Like, why is this happening, right? Something's going very good. So why is all of a sudden we kind of get taken in this unhelpful direction? Well, I think it's two reasons that I did try to explain earlier. So sorry. The first one I think is just like a pure happy emotion. I think the first reason why this is happening and why all of a sudden we start to get impatient and try to do too fast, too much, too soon is because things are working, for a change. For the first time in many years, things are starting to work. And you know that feeling when you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing something and it's working and it feels good. You're like, I just want more of this good feeling, and I want more things to work. So I think that part of the reason why all of a sudden we're trying to do too fast, too much, too soon is because things are working, starting to work, and because we like it and it's fun and it feels good to finally do things and have them work for a change. Okay. And you just want more of it. I think another reason too, why this is kind of getting distorted and why there were some good things going on and then all of a sudden we're going too fast, too much, too soon is not just joy, but I think also secondary is fear. There's some fear there involved. Fear that if we don't change it all right away, then we're going to be stuck. Fear if we don't change it all right now, fast, then, the past 5 years are going to repeat. Then we're never going to get to where we want to go, or that something and someone's going to stop us and tell us that what we're doing is bad and we don't want that anymore, and fear that not only are we going to fall back into the past, but maybe there's a secondary fear that we can't pick ourselves out of the past or stand up for ourselves if someone says something to us, hear about it. I think that there's some fear around that too. Because if there wasn't any fear, sure, I can understand the joy factor, but if there wasn't any fear around all of this, I don't think we'd be going as fast as we would. We would just let ourselves enjoy the process. So I think there's a lot of underlying fear going on that's distorting the situation here that's happening. Okay. That we're going to have to learn how to work with. Now, this fear is this fear, when is this fear going to go away, right? Oops. When is this fear going to go away? Now, that's a little bit harder. That's a little bit longer. Maybe I'll say that. The fear is going to go away. I got to say, there is something I like about next year. The 2026 astrological year, when the South Node is going to make a conjunction with Jupiter and Leo. And that to me can bring a lot of healing, a lot of happiness, a lot of joy, can be a lot better. So I think that the fear, really resolving the fear and feeling happier is a little bit of a longer journey. I have to say that I don't think it's going to happen necessarily at this new moon. But what I will say is that the way to resolve this fear and this desire is, right, not necessarily to want all the fear to be gone. It's not necessarily to want all the fear to be gone, because I just don't think that it is quite yet here, but is to, right, better manage your emotions and to better manage your situation, right? By slowing it down and by keeping things simpler and easier and only focusing on the truth, the things that actually matter, right? Because that's going to help you with the fear, right? If you're afraid, sometimes we think that doing it all at once is going to be good, but sometimes doing it all at once can then explode and then create more fear. Sometimes if we're afraid, a little by little is good, because then you take one step, you're afraid, and then you recover from the fear. And then you take another step after kind of recovering from the fear, and then maybe you get triggered again, and then you recover again. So it's like taking your time is really going to help you work through the fear. And not only taking your time is going to help you work through the fear, but also too simplifying is going to help you work through the fear, because there's not going to be so many steps. You're only going to be focusing on your priorities or the steps that are absolutely necessary here in order to move forward. So that's really the advice on how to handle this. I mean, we stay, be happy, enjoy it. I'm glad things are starting to work here, but try to manage your fear by taking it easier and simplifying your situation and only focusing on your priorities. Okay. Because what we're doing is fine, right? I hope you understand what we first start out doing is fine. It's like, then all of a sudden we start to get afraid and we mess it up. Okay. So we gotta get to that first idea, you know, and that's also another thing that can be interesting about this new moon in Taurus. It's like we have a first idea to do something. The first idea is a good idea. And then all of a sudden we want to do more and more and more. And then we get crazy. So we got to stick back to the first intention here about what we were hoping to do and to really stay on that track when we were in more of a peaceful and a clear and a motivated space here that's going on. Okay, now another thought that I want to give you is like, when in the future are these actions that we're now taking that we need to pace ourselves on going to actually work? Well, July. That to me is July of this year. Okay, the reason why it's July of this year is because, you know, a lot of planets are going to change signs between now and July. We still need Saturn to change signs into Aries. We need Uranus to move into Gemini. We need Jupiter to move into Cancer. Okay, that's going to be done around July. Okay, and Jupiter in Cancer is great. It's a sign of exaltation. So when is it these actions that we're doing now that we need to pace ourselves on and not get ahead of ourselves? When is it that those actions, in my opinion, are going to start to work in significant ways, more significant ways than they already are, to get us to somewhere we want to be? July of this year, 2025. Okay, July of 2025. Okay. And that's actually not too long from now, right? What is that, 2 months? It's almost May to June, July, 2 months here that's going on. And that's also why, like, what's going on at this new moon in Taurus is a bit funny, because it's like, we're almost there. We're so close. You're 2 months away. I mean, 2 months compared to the past 5 years is nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's like, why are we rushing something that is already going well, that's already on a very good trajectory, that's already on a very fast timeline? Why are we rushing something that's already on a very fast timeline? So that's my other thought here. You know, we're rushing something that there's no need to rush because it's already going very well. You just have to trust yourself and continue onwards on that path here in the way that it needs, because it's going to get us to our destination just fine and just the right timing if you don't freak out here about it and create some of this unnecessary stress that's going on. Okay. Okay. You know, and maybe another thought, you know, having all planets direct, right? That's what they all are now. They're all direct. Like Venus is still in post retrograde shadow, but right, Mars and Mercury are out of it. You can see all the planets are direct here in the chart, except what the nodes. The nodes are retrograde, but they're retrograde more often than direct. Okay, so that's pretty normal. And, you know, I will say this, I've been thinking a bit about this lately here, because I have tons of planets retrograde in my chart. Like every planet in my own natal chart is retrograde except for Jupiter and Mars. And so I definitely feel like I'm a retrograde person. And so I've been thinking about the difference between retrograde and all planets direct. And I think a thing that happens here, I think there are advantages and disadvantages to each. Maybe that's what I'm going to say. And I think obviously when planets are retrograde, we, as people into astrology, are more aware of the disadvantages. When planets are retrograde, we're stuck. We have to redo things. Things are confusing. Things are unclear. But I think sometimes the problem when all planets are direct that no one really talks about is when a lot of planets are direct, sometimes we're not thinking about what is actually the most important to our situation. So we get into a lot of situations that are fun, that are interesting, that without actually reflecting on, is this really good for me and for what I need to do? And so I think that this is one of these situations here with this new moon in Taurus, right? With all these planets direct, is that it's like all of a sudden the guardrails are coming off after being stuck for, I think, 5 years, but especially the past few months while Mars has been retrograde and Mercury and Venus. And now all of a sudden it's like a free for all. We're not going to rethink what we're doing. And if it's important, we're just going to do it everything and do it all. And that can create its own issues. So having, you know, all planets direct, you know, isn't always as shiny as it is cracked up to be, or as some people say, because it can create a lot of these situations where we take on a lot of things that really are not important to our situation and end up doing a lot more than we need to do. And I think that's a big message here. We're exactly where we need to be. and we're doing exactly what needs to be done, whether you realize it or not. All you have to do is just keep going without forcing the process step by step until July, and trust yourself. Here, that's going on. Right. Another thing I want to note is I don't think we can rush July. Like, July to me is the date. I don't think there's any shortcut here. I mean, it's only 2 months away. How much shorter do you want it to be? So there's no shortcut. It's not like, oh, I want it to happen before July. It's like, July's it. Okay. And we need to just be at peace with that. Okay. Another thought that I want to leave you with maybe is like a little bit of a metaphor really quickly. We've got this new moon in Taurus. Taurus is symbolized by the bull. Sometimes you get the phrase a bull in a china shop, right? That's going on, where it's like a bull can be very strong, have a lot of power, but then when it comes to things that need to be taken care of, can have a little bit of a heavy hand and be knocking things over. And we need to not be a bull in a china shop. Okay. Here, that's going on. We need to still have the strength, of the bull, the stamina of the bull, but you got to be a little more gentle here when it comes to what you're doing and how you're doing things, so that it's what we're focusing on, what's the most important here for our situation. Okay. Anything else? Sure. Another thought that I'll give you too is relationships, right? There is some things going on with relationships, arguments, conflicts, disagreements, that either you can start with someone else or someone else can start with you. Okay. If you're starting it with someone else, right, try to remember this advice, to slow down a little, find your own inner rhythm, and to simplify, focus on your parties less and more. But if you're dealing with someone who's trying to rush you for whatever reason, then maybe I'll give you all some advice very quickly. The advice for you could be to just remove yourself from that relationship, right? Taurus is not a relationship sign. It's about your own kind of needs. So some of the advice could be to remove yourself from that relationship. Here, I think there's a lot of that really has been needing to happen the past year and a half. If that's not the advice, then part of the advice here is, if you really value this person here and align with them, is to then apply some of the advice to them. Try to slow them down, try to get them thinking a little more about their priorities, or to make a list of like, what's the most important to you here that's going on, and help them feel a little bit more confident or calm some more of their nerves as well. That might be needed. Okay. Anything else? Sure. Maybe now I'll give you a few examples of how this might play out in your life, and just various scenarios that, a lot of people might have. Where do I want to start? Some of this could be a money thing, especially with the Taurus. Taurus is also a sign of money here. So this could be a money thing. Maybe some of you have recently, especially at that solar eclipse in Aries, tried to start a new job or a new business, or to start looking for a new job or a new position of some sort here. Well, what could happen at this new moon in Taurus is that something could actually start to go pretty well. Maybe you find a job, or maybe you start that new job or promotion, or maybe you start this new thing for your business and it starts to work. You start to make money, people start to like you, it starts to come together. But then what could happen is that you all of a sudden could get impatient about the money coming in, or about the job thing and what's going on at work, and want to do more faster. I want to get the job faster. I want to do more at work to prove myself even more. I want to do more things to make money. And that can create the problems, the burnout, the anger, the frustration here, and cause you maybe to kind of change things that don't need changing, or be a bull in a china shop. You know what I mean? So there's that. Another way this could play out could be a situation with, maybe it's like a home situation, wanting to move home of some sort here. So, or buy and sell a home, or rent or something. So in the past few weeks, some of you could have been wanting to do that. Well, at this new moon in Taurus, something could start to happen here. Maybe you start to find an area, or find a home that you want to move to, or find a buyer, or something of that sort. You start to kind of hone in or narrow in on something that would be good, but then all of a sudden, maybe you want to push it faster. I want to push it faster. I need to kind of make it work just perfect in the timing and all of that, or to move faster here and all of that. And that could backfire. Because maybe then it will make you kind of burn out or overlook things in this new place that maybe don't align with you, right? To kind of overlook these things here, or maybe get in disagreements with, a realtor or other things like that. So there can be some problems there, right? And the advice is to calm down and take it easy, right? If a place is truly meant, if something is truly meant for you, it's not going to pass you by, and if it falls through, it's not meant for you. There's something better coming, right? So we got to calm down here. If not, this could be a health situation. Sometimes Taurus too has to do with the body. Maybe some of you have recently started to try to fix your health and adjust that. And maybe what happened at this new moon in Taurus is that you start to find something that's working to fix maybe a longstanding health problem or to get on board with it. But then maybe what happens is that it's working so much, right, that you then start to push it faster. You want it to work faster, or you start taking more treatments that you don't need in order to do all of this stuff, or more of the same treatment that isn't necessary. Or maybe your doctor's the one rushing you. You got to do this and push this here, or pushing you in a different direction that can create arguments and conflicts here as well, that you're going to have to calm down and slow down on here. Okay. And pace yourself, because the body just takes time, right? These things just take time to heal. And it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just the way it is. You got to let nature take its course, which is a thing here as well. Okay. What else? Maybe this is, a relationship thing here that's going on. I feel like that's a little bit less of a thing for a lot of you with the energy, but maybe that's going on here. There's a relationship that you've been trying to adjust for a while to be different and better. Could be a friendship, could be a partner, romantic, either one, or a business one, either way you think of it. Okay. And what can happen at this new moon in Taurus is that it's starting to work. You and this person are finally starting to fix things and get it together in a way that's good, that you need to kind of get along and make it work. But then what can happen is either you or the person that you're connecting with could then want more faster, because it's kind of working more faster sooner. And then big arguments here that's going on. And then things are getting crazy, and then things are changing that don't need to be changed right here with the relationship. That can make it harder. And you got to calm down. Not get ahead of yourself. Okay. Find, your new rhythm with the two of you here. Pace yourself and focus only on what really matters the most in the relationship, instead of all this other stuff here to help. Okay. So I think that's what I'm going to say there for now. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at your inside degrees. So let me pull those up on the screen. Those were not written by me. They were written by someone else named Elias Lonsdale, who channeled the meanings of each of the degrees from spirit. But I like to look at these because I think they're very interesting and can add more information and detail to the horoscope. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. This new moon is at 7 degrees Taurus, but I believe the degrees of before and after can all be relevant. So we're going to look at those. I've got 6 degrees Taurus here up on the screen. Okay. It says, the heart feels everything. It burns with a fever. Inside the burning, something marvelous is forming. Grace permits the realization of the heart's desires. You become a vessel to demonstrate, to share the beauty, the love, and the light. So this to me is very positive on 6 degrees Taurus, indicating that there's something at this new moon where we are feeling hopeful, right? Something marvelous is forming, and where we are feeling motivated, right? Heart's desires, feeling motivated, and where we're also starting to feel a little more capable, a vessel to demonstrate, capable to achieve our desires and to make this something marvelous happen in our lives. So this is a very hopeful beginning to part of it. Let's read on. It said, yet all of this is implicit, is inherent, it is inward, it is not seen by outer eyes. You are warming through slowly, contemplatively, those qualities of the soul that are best entered upon from reflection. The inner life is rich beyond measure, with seeds which will be fertilized and are given forth in the fullness of time, with a consummate touch of having been through the fire to attain what is true and lasting. So what I get from the second part is the implicit, inherent, and inward. And that's the nature of the new moon, right? Remember I said at the beginning of this video, new moons are dark. You can't really see them in the sky. You can, but they're very dark in the sky here and harder to see. And so I think that something very good is going on here in our lives, and the motivation and the drive and the clarity, but it's just not fully seen yet. It hasn't come, right? This isn't a full moon. It hasn't come to fulfillment yet. It hasn't fully manifested. And sometimes that's a little hard when you don't quite see things yet that's going on. Okay. You know, and right, and maybe that's why we're pushing things, because we're seeing things start to manifest but not fully manifest, right? And we want more of that manifestation to occur there. All right, let's move on. Taurus 7, the actual degree of the new moon. It says, a beautiful dream that comes true, conceiving in your heart that a fresh life current is here to be met in the physical, being magnetized to the spot where the new earth arises. You feel deeply drawn to give yourself over completely to what the new life wave asks, sensing acutely that this is all that counts and suffering from all those who are shut off from the bounty. So what does this beginning part mean? This to me is also very hopeful. Fresh life current met in the physical, deeply drawn to do what it asks, right? This to me also indicates like we're feeling more capable of changing our life and more hopeful that something better is on the horizon. So I keep getting that. I think there's multiple things here that are saying that. Okay. Something good going on. All right, let's read on. It says, knowing how hard it is to feel dejected and forsaken, and never forgetting the ache, the longing, the distances, and what it takes to earnestly clasp new life and realize you belong to the heavenly kingdom and the earth and will never again be out in the cold. This speaks to the past, right? Remember I said there's some kind of fear that we're going to not work and fall into the past. There's definitely an inner remembrance of how hard it's been to get here. That's going, that I think we're trying to escape. Okay. And so both of these degrees, we'll read 8 in a minute, but I think both of these degrees do mention a lot of what we spoke about. There's a lot of hopefulness here. Things are going to change. I'm ready to do it. I want to do it. I'm going to make my life better here, but it's still being in its youthful stages. It's still being in the early stages of things changing and maybe not fully seen to the extent that we want it to be seen, and still afraid, you know, and still feeling the burn of the past few years, still feeling the burn of the past few years and what it took to get here, and not really wanting to relive that. Okay. Let's read on. Taurus 8. It says, self-confounding, fascinated. You are engrossed by the fabulous disattunement you seem to be stuck with, suspended, enchanted, held fast by ancient errors, rendered safe or innocuous, being held down by an old curse and not being able to find any way out of it. Nothing comes together. Okay. I think this indicates, right, that good things are happening, but because it's maybe still in its early stages, still smaller, not as big as we want it to be, and we remember the hard feelings of the past, we are feeling stuck in old things, and more in the old things than in the new, right? That's difficult for us. Okay. Right? Held down by an old curse. And I think this makes me think a few other things of like taking our progress for granted. I think that's a thought that came to me here reading these degrees, because I think we are. I think at this new moon in Taurus, we're making progress, but because it may not be as big as we want to, because we're still in the early stages, right? It's normal when you're still in the early stages for it to be smaller. Maybe we're discounting it. And maybe we're taking it for granted. It's like, oh, sure, I guess it's starting to come together, but not really. You know, here that's going on, making us feel more stuck. And maybe that's what some of you are thinking. Maybe some of you were listening to the good parts of this horoscope and you're like, I don't feel that. I don't feel like I'm making progress. I don't feel like I'm getting clarity. Well, this to me indicates that maybe you are, but you're not recognizing it as good, or you're not recognizing it as clarity because you want more or bigger, or because of your expectations here that's going on, and you're missing it. And this is reminding me of like to see the good and where you are, and to see how far you've come, and to appreciate that, and to be grateful for that, to be grateful for how far you have come and what you do have. Not that you can't want more, you know, but appreciating where you are, I think will also help to bring things into balance, right? Because I think something good really is going on, whether you are seeing it or not, right? Whether you see it yet or not. Underneath the surface, the tides are turning. Okay. Let's read on. It says, meanwhile, you are entertained by myriad factors as diversions, living out secondary circuits, trying to be content. You're good at reality adjustment, practicing the art of making it work somehow, but deeply frustrated, profoundly alienated, and existentially doubting just about everything in sight, waiting as patiently as you can for something to shift somewhere, anywhere, and becoming quite witty and bemused with a biting edge that says it's not funny. So this to me speaks of some dejection that we're feeling, and maybe some mischief we might get into because we're feeling like we're not where we want to be yet, and which is hard. And maybe that's part of something that I missed. I was going through the reasons earlier in this video of like why we're trying to force things. And I said, one of them is because what we're doing is working and we're just so excited. And I said some others were because of fear. We're afraid we're going to fall backwards. I still think those are true, but I think maybe there's another option that this is reminding me of. Maybe there's another option of why we're getting impatient is because we're not recognizing just how far we've come and just how how things are shifting. We're not recognizing and seeing just how far we've come and just how much more clarity we've been starting to get the past few weeks, even if it's not the full clarity, and we're taking the little stuff for granted as well, right? And when you're not appreciating the little successes that you've had, you also think you're not where you want to be and you want to rush. So this to me is a third here coming, because I think something good has been going on. You just got to recognize it for what it is and accept it for what it is and not want it to be more than what it is as well. Another thought, right? Let me give you a thought. Let's say we've got like let's say there's something you want to do, to give you like a metaphor, an image. Let's say there's something you want to do. There's 10 steps to do it, right? Well, when you're on the first 2 or 3 steps, you're making progress, right? You're on the third step. That's great. But maybe it doesn't feel like you're making progress because you're still close to the first step, right? Even if you did the second and the third step really easy, as to where if you're on the 7th step, you feel great because you're like, oh, I've done all this stuff and now I'm making progress. And so I think that's part of it, is like now we're on the 3rd, maybe I should give us 4th. I don't know. Now we're around the 3rd step to improving our lives. That's huge. We haven't been able to get here in forever. We just did 1, 2, and 3 steps pretty easily. Now we're on the 3rd step, but we're not seeing it as good because there's still 7 more steps to go. And we need to see it as a good thing, because 3 steps, doing it quickly and easily is still 3 steps. No matter if it's the beginning of the journey or the end of the journey here. And we kind of need to celebrate that and pat ourselves in the back for that and for what we have done as well, and celebrate the little things. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull your card. So let me do that here. We've got the Knight of Pentacles upright. How fitting for a new moon in Taurus. So we've got an Earth card here, the Pentacles. And then at the bottom of the deck, we've got Temperance. Temperance upright here. Both of these cards are, to me, are not fast ones, I will say. Not that things aren't happening fast. It's just that fast is not the goal. Okay. Because he's kind of just chilling in this card, and also the person in this card is also taking the time as well to kind of plan things out and think things through. So not a fast energy here. Temperance to me is also about balance, finding balance or peace or some kind of inner calm here, right? And we see that happening, this is there's 2 sides in this card. It's like a sunny day, a happy day, and then there's a lot of lightning. And so maybe this is the 2 parts of ourselves. Maybe there's one part of ourselves that thinks we're doing really well in our situation and another part of ourselves that thinks we're not. And we have to kind of find the balance between that so that we're not too much in either one, and are more calm. Okay. And then in this card, the Knight of Pentacles, he is literally planning out a path of what might need to be done or what might be the best route. And so I think that some of that can be good. Not too much of that with the South Node in Virgo, but I think a little bit more thought about what you're trying to achieve and what would be the most sensible here, or even the most practical for your situation. will help. So I think that's my thought here. Calm your emotions, right, that you're feeling here, and balance them, get them more balanced, maybe after that full moon in Libra that we had here that's going on, so that you're not overly excited about your situation, but not overly negative about it either. And then try to make a little bit of a plan about how best you want to go about your situation, and be just a little more practical and sensible about things to get you to kind of where you need to be here to make it happen. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful for you. I'll see you 2 weeks from now on that full moon in the sign of Scorpio. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube or share it with your friends. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.